We're going to move on to our next conversation. Joining us via Skype is journalist and co-host of the podcast Gaslit Nation, Sarah Kendzior. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And then joining us here in studio, friend of Bold and a GOP strategic advisor and businessman, John Burnett. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Sarah. It's great to talk with you. First, can you define gaslighting for us?
Sure. Gaslighting is basically when somebody in a position of power denies objective reality to a vulnerable party. And they lie blatantly. They lie about things that you can see with your own eyes. And the reason they do that is not just to tell the lie, but to show their power, to show that you have been essentially rendered ineffective in that dynamic and that you have no choice but to kind of buy into their own reality.
And do you think that we're being gaslit right now, basically, by the president, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been gaslit by this administration the entire time. I mean, look at his inauguration when he said he had record crowds. And I mean, that's an example of gaslighting. We could all see that with our own eyes and know that the crowds were in fact quite small. But the point of it wasn't to deceive us. The point of it was the audacity of the lie. I think the shutdown has maybe changed things a little bit because conditions are deteriorating so rapidly and so many people are suffering in plain sight that it's harder for them to keep up this facade. And I'm not even sure that they're bothering at this point because they don't care what we know. They're consolidating power and they're not worried about the repercussions even for their own voters, even for their own base.
What do you think is so effective about how Trump communicates, particularly to his base? Because it doesn't seem like it seems like Trump supporters and conservatives generally get really up in arms about this idea that Trump is spinning rhetoric and particularly around the idea of fake news and sort of his dislike of the media or mainstream media, traditional press. And so what is it that you think that is so effective about his style of communication across these different groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, the base, his voters, it's not a monolith. It's different people that like him or buy into him for different reasons. The irony of Trump attacking the media is that, in fact, the media has been his best friend. He has this, kind of one-way relationship where he tweets something out. It has national security or national policy ramifications. So reporters are forced to parse it, even though he's abusing the media at the same time. And there's no transparency in this administration. They hide facts, they lie, they don't have regular White House briefings. But Trump, people kind of underestimate him in sense of his mental agility. He's not some sort of geopolitical mastermind, but he's very good at spin. He's very good at propaganda. He's very good at manipulating the media. And I think especially because the media financially has been going through hard times for about 15 years, they were a very easy mark for someone like Trump. But at this point, they should have caught up. They should be correcting these lies bluntly.
Well, Sarah, I agree that part of why Trump won was because of the media, because he is good for ratings. And even, I think it was the president or a head at CBS News said, I don't care, Trump might be bad for democracy, but he's great for CBS. So that's interesting from a business standpoint. But I do think that there is a lot of bias. And every day, in fact, I write a blog post for Accuracy in Media, which is a conservative media watchdog group calling out liberal bias in the media. And you look at the statistics, it's something like at least 3 or 4 to 1 of how mainstream journalists self-identify as Democrat or progressive versus Republican or conservative in how they identify, and a big gap between how journalists identify versus how the country self-identifies politically. There is a huge disconnect. Just one example, Chris Cillizza from CNN, I just wrote about this today. When Nancy Pelosi said the thing about the State of the Union address, she and was trying to pressure Trump and say move the date because of security problems, because of the shutdown, you're ruining the security. Cillizza called that a power move. And then the same thing happens with Trump, and he turns around and quashes her trip overseas and says you can't have the military plane for this. And he says that that's taking the low road as always. And just the framing. There's a lot of framing problems, I think. And so in some respects, I think the media has been gaslighting us for a long time, and that's what a lot of what the Trump voters are pushing back against. But I want to bring John Burnett into this. John, do you think that Trump is gaslighting the country?
I think Sarah is. I think he's not. I think what he's doing is addressing issues that Congress has voted on for over a decade and has not delivered, right? So the business mindset is we're not going to sit around and talk about this for decades. We're going to get it done. And that's what he's trying to do. Now, Congressman Meeks came on and said that they're at the table trying to negotiate. Well, let me tell you, Congressman Meeks and your cohort, not giving $1 toward border security as defined by 62 million people that voted is just not his base, right? And there's a growing number of the Hispanic population. In fact, the NPR poll stated that the support among Hispanics for the wall jumped 19%. So it's not just the base, it's a growing number of people that want the issue fixed. And if Trump doesn't fix it, they'll be kicking it down the road. We'll be having the same conversations in 2040.
We got a couple Twitter viewer comments from Jill Ross. Says that Sarah is so brilliant. And Paintmaster One says American workers are not political pawns for Trump's agenda. Wesley Scott says exactly, John Burnett, God bless you. So our viewers are agreeing to disagree, so this is good.
It's a 50-50 poll. Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yes. So.
It's a good sample size.
Yeah, no, I think that in terms of how to move the country forward, like whether you think Trump is gaslighting the country or not, it's clear that he's tapped into something that's not just here in the U.S. We were talking about Brexit earlier, and in France, there is clearly a populist impulse right now that a lot of people are feeling frustrated. So, Sarah, what about that? How that's not gaslighting, right? That's real people of how they feel frustrated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's genuine pain, there's genuine suffering. And I do think that Trump has the ability to tap into that. What he doesn't do, though, is try to remedy the problem. I don't think that he's interested in people's pain because he wants to make their lives better. I think it's because he wants to prey upon them and manipulate it for his own political gain. And he's certainly not alone in that. You see that all throughout the Republican Party. And this also follows, years, I think, of negligence on the part of Democrats, independents, Republicans. The country was a mess by the time Trump came in. He exploited what was already a bad situation. But what we're seeing now, I think, is the culmination of that. I don't think that the shutdown is about a wall. I think the shutdown is an extension of what the GOP tried to do in 2013. It was evidence of a social breakdown. They want to say, people don't need these services. People who are poor, in particular, don't deserve these services. We're about to have a massive food stamp crisis. And they're trying to normalize that. And another thing that concerns me is that they don't seem at all worried about the repercussions of this either on a humanitarian level or on a political level. They're not worried about losing an election because their voters can't eat. That should concern everybody in America.
All right, Sarah, we're going to leave it right there. We'd love to have you back sometime. And John, we'll let you guys respond. Go back and forth on Facebook. We'd love that to continue. We got to move. We got the train going forward, John.
You're shutting us down.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. 10 seconds. Respond to Sarah.
The thing is that, believe it or not, when you look at Donald Trump and you look at Bernie Sanders, many times they're trying to address the same thing in terms of the enormous outsourcing, the drastic reduction of the type of jobs that we're actually creating, which are only retail jobs. And when you look at the influx of the high levels of legal and the unfettered illegal immigration has driven wages down, and it has actually drained our public goods. Teachers are actually protesting in California right now. Why? Because of low wages, but also overcrowded classrooms. We're experiencing the same thing in New York, right? With our overcrowded schools and a housing crisis.
All right, so it's a bipartisan problem. Yes. No, John, I think we can all agree it's not going to just be one person, whether Bernie Sanders or President Trump, who would solve these issues. We all got to work together.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, John.
Thank you.